Okay, Claudia, I'll mute you now.
No, Melody.
Melody. Sorry about that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. We're going to be on for the next hour. Claudia will be joining us in just a couple of minutes. We're waiting for more people to join us on the call. So there's just a couple of people on right now. Let me go through a few things right now. If you have a question of Claudia, please, by all means, press 0. That's 0 on the keypad on your phone, 0 to ask a question. If you want to provide an email address, press 7 on the keypad on your phone. Although there's not much time between now and Election Day, which is Tuesday, and we hope you're all going to go out and vote if you haven't voted in some fashion already. Again, welcome everybody. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. And the whole idea with these telephone town halls, it's kind of like talk radio on the phone, is for you to ask questions, ask them live. And the best way to do that is to press 0. That's 0 on the keypad on your phone if you have a question. So we want you to ask questions. It's a great thing. It keeps the conversation moving much better than if I have to ask Claudia a question. So, again, one more time, welcome everybody. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. If you have a question tonight on this call with Claudia, we want you to press 0. That's 0 on the keypad on your phone. We'll get that question queued up so you can ask it live and in person. One last time, welcome everybody. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Again, press 0 for questions. Claudia, take it away if you would, please.
Yes, thank you so much for everybody for joining us. This is a real honor for me to have an opportunity to talk to all of you and just trying to make as many opportunities for people to ask me directly if they have any questions through this or through live meetings. We're trying to get to every part of the district, the 22nd Congressional District, as possible, so I thank you for that. I'm very excited about the opportunity to run for Congress. It's certainly been an honor to meet all of you and to hear your concerns. And as a person I consider myself to be a constitutional conservative, and that's probably why the State Conservative Party has continuously ranked me as one of their number one, if not their number one, 3 out of the last 4 years, conservatives in the state, not just in the Assembly, but that includes the state Senate as well. I've been elected because I stand for conservative principles. That's how I ran my very first campaign in 2010, and that's exactly what my record shows. I'm very strong supporter of reducing taxes and reducing government. As a small business owner, that's always been the magic formula that has brought prosperity to states in our country. Right now, New York is ranked 50th because we do just the opposite. We take and we hand those over to big businesses, and in turn are able to use that money to reduce the size, to give big businesses the advantage over small businesses. So that's exactly what I'm against as a small business owner. I know what it's like to compete against a big business that gets subsidies from government. It's unfair. It takes away our freedom and our individual rights. I'm also a very strong supporter of our Second Amendment. I worked very diligently to try to prevent the passage of the SAFE Act. Sadly, it was rushed through by the governor with a measure of necessity, and our majorities voted it through. I'm the first legislator in the state of New York to propose repeal legislation. That's total repeal of the SAFE Act. I'm also the first legislator to stand up and call for the resignation of corrupt Speaker Shelley Silver, who was using taxpayer money to pay off secret sexual harassment cases, and I've stood up against our corrupt dictator Ray Halberter, who's out in the western part using the real Oneida Indians to create a casino gambling empire. Some of these big businesses, including the casino concerns, are some of the people spending literally almost $2 million on the flyers and the relentless ads that you're seeing on TV that are against me, trying to portray me as some kind of liberal, which I'm not. I want to emphasize that I have never voted to raise taxes in my 4 years in the state assembly. To the contrary, I've actually voted for the largest middle-class income tax cut in 58 years, and that was in December of 2011. There were many phony initiatives in the New York State budget that were exemptions. They were not tax reductions as is falsely reported in the direct mail pieces and also on the commercials that you're seeing. So As a constitutional conservative, it would be an anathema for me to vote for a tax increase, obviously, as someone who believes in less taxes and less government. I am also someone who stood up again against some of these backdoor borrowing schemes that were a part of the state budget. We also had almost $57 million in taxpayer money that was funneled into a lawful gun owner database and an ammunitions database. I voted against that, which was part of the omnibus budget. And I've also been a strong opponent of Common Core. I don't believe the federal government has the right to come in and force their initiatives and, using, again, corrupt operations like In Bloom and Pearson, not that they're corrupt, but they're big crony capitalist organizations to come in and tell our parents and what their curriculum should be and tell our teachers how to teach. They've basically turned them into hall monitors through Common Core, so I'm very much against Common Core. With that, I don't know if you have any questions yet, but I'd be happy to keep talking. So.
Oh no, we have plenty of people taking us up on that offer, Claudia. We have a full queue.
I just keep getting an interruption on here. Is that normal on my phone or?
Not from this side of it. I'm not hearing it.
All right.
But anyway,
it sort of interrupted me a few times. It was a number coming through, and it wasn't. Anyway, go ahead. I'm happy. Just wanted to do technicality there. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's take our first question, and you kind of covered this, but we still have people joining the call, so let's take Ted right off. Ted, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Where in the district you're from, and what's your question, please?
We have received many mailings from who attacking Claudia's voting record, and I'm suspicious that there's more than one way to represent a vote, and I wonder if the votes have been represented fairly. That Claudia has voted in a liberal fashion. I suspect it's not true, but can you defend it?
Yes. Thank you, Ted. It's about almost a $2 million campaign against me. I put some of my own money into this, and my total campaign expenditures are going to be about $150,000 against almost $2 million, all from liberal Washington super PACs that are trying to distort my record. I am the top conservative in New York right now, and I have been for my 4 years. Pretty much 3 out of the 4 years, we've been juggling with a few of the other top conservatives. There's basically 6 of us always vying for the top. I've never voted to raise taxes, as the flyers indicate. There were no tax cuts in the state budget, which I voted against. I rejected the budget and voted no, like the top 6 conservatives. We all stood together on that against the corrupt budget that was put through by Andrew Cuomo and Sheldon Silver, who rubber-stamped it, and it was basically shoved down the throats of the New York State Senate. They accepted it, unfortunately. But I've never voted to raise taxes, and I just can't believe these flyers. In fact, I've noticed the flyers and some of the commercials have cited the votes in the New York State Senate. I've never been a member of the New York State Senate. I was elected to the Assembly in 2010 and reelected in 2012. So, no, these are fraudulent. I don't know another better word to use. I have not voted to raise taxes. I did vote against the state budget that had some tax exemption items in it, but most of these items were completely unacceptable and unfair to upstate New York, and they would not have caused a tax reduction. They were merely used as sound bites for the governor to run around and make it look like he's actually reducing taxes. But when you open your tax bill this year, none of your taxes will be going down unless for some reason your local county government reduced sales tax. One thing that's really important is the state government does not have anything to do with property taxes. That's all done at the local level, either by your school district or your county and town. So I notice the commercials keep saying, I raised property taxes, something I cannot do. They say, I raised sales tax, something I cannot do. I have never voted for an increase in sales tax in my 4 years in the Assembly. So I don't have $2 million to spend to refute it, but I'm doing the best job through teletown halls like this, in person, in news, on Facebook and Twitter, and any media I can get out to try to emphasize that these are not accurate And it's interesting that to note that I don't know if who's listening, but these multi-million-dollar, actually billion-dollar super PACs, one is put forth by a guy named John Singer. He is probably the wealthiest and spends more on advocating for gay rights than any other group in the country. We also, the second PAC is called Patriot Prosperity PAC. It's a group that's owned by a guy named, or run primarily and funded by a guy named Sheldon Adelson. Sheldon Adelson is a billionaire. He's involved with international casino gaming interests. This money is being put in by Ray Halberter, who is I call him, well, what he is. He's a fraudulent, corrupt leader of the Oneida Nation. He's not even a real Oneida. He's just used the Oneida culture to build this casino empire using casino interests, Washington lobbyists. And sadly, Richard Hanna is a rubber stamp for both of these organizations, which is why they're running this looks like a desperate, panicky campaign against me, trying to portray me as somehow not conservative, even though I'm the top conservative in New York, and to cover the fact that Richard Hanna is actually ranked by the National Journal as the third most liberal Republican in the United States. Out of 233, he's ranked third. By FreedomWorks, which is another conservative group, he's got a 35% rating. Americans for Prosperity, a 50. Heritage Action for America, he has a 48% rating. American Conservative Union, these are all national rating organizations, he has a 52%. Americans for Prosperity, I mentioned that, 50% lifetime rating. National Right to Life, he has a 33% rating. These are all Fs. I'm going to rate him. Anyway, his record is very weak. Just contrast, I think people should know that Eric Cantor, who was defeated by David Brat just a few weeks ago, had a 72% conservative rating. So that just shows you how much more liberal Richard Hanna is than Eric Cantor was. So you're really dealing with a true, I would say not even moderate, a truly liberal Republican when you have records in this range with these ratings. I mean, as highest he gets to a 52, basically, and that's a lifetime average. So, yeah, I mean, I've been trying to fight this. It's hard to fight against the establishment, especially someone like me who's been very outspoken against probably some of the most powerful and wealthy people in our community. I've stood up against Ray Halberter, Governor Cuomo, and Sheldon Silver, and they would arguably be probably the three most powerful people in the state. So you can see.
Well, thank you so much, Claudia. I want to take our first survey question of the night. What is the most important issue for Congress to address? Press 1 on the keypad on your phone if it's the economy and jobs, 2 if it's budget and spending, 3 if it's immigration reform, 4 if it's health care reform, or 5 if it's something else. Here goes again. What's the most important issue for Congress to address? Press 1 for economy and jobs, press 2 for budget and spending, press 3 for immigration reform, press 4 for health care reform, or 5 for something else. And while you're voting, we're going to take John. John, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. John, where are you from, and what's your question, please?
From Altmar. It's a two-part question. If elected, what is she going to do about the disability scandal at the VA in Buffalo, New York? And is she going to back the Vietnam veterans with Agent Orange exposure?
Thank you. Thanks, John. I hope that you're a veteran if you're asking that question. Yes, I will definitely back the Vietnam veterans as Agent Orange. We've been trying to actually do that in the state assembly, but we haven't been able to get a bill passed on that just to provide some assistance. We've passed some veterans bills today. Actually, I was in session. Today's one of the last days of session. And as far as the problems with the VA, especially in Buffalo, what I proposed and what I've been proposing is until we can reform this VA system, I think that we should be allowing veterans to be using private hospitals and other facilities that we would reimburse them for so they can get the care and not be forced to wait in line and not be forced to be denied service. I have a personal interest in this as my son is an active duty Marine, but also my secretary of 25 years, her husband, was treated at the Buffalo VA and was denied coverage and denied benefits. He since died from liver cancer, And so as his attorney, we fought this battle dealing with the Buffalo VA, so I do understand from a personal perspective and as an attorney how difficult this issue has been for veterans. And I did that long before I ever considered running for Congress, since he died in 2011. But I thank you for the question, and if you serve, thank you very much. Obviously, as a federal representative, the top priority of mine is going to deal with national defense and national security, which is one of the reasons that we even created the federal government in the first place. It's a priority. I think we need to care for our veterans. I believe in peace through strength. I believe in having a strong national defense and taking care of our veterans, particularly our veterans, our personnel, versus the military-industrial complex, as they call it. And I think sometimes, I know in a recent vote, Richard Hanna voted to actually reduce veterans' benefits at the expense of providing more benefits to the military-industrial complex, which you hear about, how we used to spend thousands of dollars for a toilet or whatever. And I think that's where we should be looking at fraud, waste, and cutting, and not when it comes to taking care of our veterans who put themselves in harm's way. They answer the call to service. Many of them are injured, or sadly, many of them pay the ultimate sacrifice of serving our nation and protecting our freedoms. And I know as a mother, my son is about to finish his training and maybe heading overseas. This is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. So I will be focusing very much on veterans issues if I'm lucky enough to be elected. But thank you so much for the question.
Our next survey question, it's a press 1 or press 2 kind of situation. If the election were held tomorrow, who would you vote for? Press 1 if you'd be voting for Claudia, or 2 for Richard Hanna. Here's the question again. Who are you going to vote for? Press 1 for Claudia or 2 for Richard Hanna. We appreciate your honesty in voting on that. I want to also remind people, if they'd like to provide us their email address so we can provide you email updates between now and Tuesday, that'd be great. You press 7 on the keypad to do that. Meanwhile, we are going to take Betty. Betty, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Betty, where are you from, and what's your question, please?
I'm from Camden, and as I said, I would like to know the reason it was put in the paper that Claudia was backing the United Nations over there, and I'm wondering, first off, how can a sovereign nation be inside of the USA? And why is it we don't have any say over the United Nations, but Halberger can say anything he wants, who he can have running in office? He can go down to Washington and get his way down in Washington, or he can go to Utica and get his way in Utica. But we can't say anything against Halberger or his Indian nation.
Thank you, Betty. And I don't know, somebody who's putting that, wherever you saw that in the Camden paper, they're grossly misinformed. I'm probably one of the strongest advocates against what's happening with the United Nations. I am actually an attorney. I represent a county legislator, a real Oneida Indian, against what's happening with the Oneida Nation. We have fought tooth and nail to force them to pay their taxes. We have fought tooth and nail to prevent them from taking land away from American citizens and away from New York State. It is unconstitutional. It is something the state should be doing also. The state, under Section 2, Article 10, Section 2 of the state law, must defend the sovereignty of New York. That is also required of the national Constitution. I've been fighting this completely free as a pro bono attorney on behalf of citizens in this community. And unfortunately, our leaders, including Governor Cuomo, our county legislature, the majority of them, and sadly the Republicans, our county executive, Tony Pacenti, and several other representatives have rubber-stamped this horrible deal, the Oneida Nation deal, against the citizens of this community, which I think will go down, if I'm not successful in defeating this in the courts, as the single biggest disaster, save maybe the loss of Griffiths Air Force Base, or even worse, that this community has seen. So I've been fighting this tooth and nail. I wrote an article in the New York Post last year against this. I wrote an article in the Syracuse Post-Standard. I've submitted numerous articles and talked to the media many times. And this lady, Betty, you point exactly what's going on. Our politicians, including Richard Hanna, have turned their back on the people of this community by supporting this deal. Richard Hanna, you can go to his website, supports the Oneida Nation, supports Ray Halberter, supports this deal, and this deal is terrible for the citizens of our community. It will destroy our property values. We have lost over $1 billion in back taxes on this deal alone, and we're going to lose all taxes going forward. Many constituents, people living in Augusta, Vernon, Verona, and parts of Vienna, anyone that has land along the shore of Oneida Lake, are going to be losing their status and their ability to have any control over their land because it's going to be handed back over to the Oneida Nation. This is after we've won the land claim. It was dismissed. We've won every tax battle in court at the federal and state level. They have to pay their taxes. And the worst sin of all of this is Ray Halberter, thanks to my tireless efforts and some other people that assisted me, he is not even an Oneida Indian, so he has committed a gross fraud on this community by trying to use the Oneida culture and prop up this phony casino and taken the money pretty much for himself, and he's used it to pay off politicians, and now he's spending hundreds of thousands of dollars running negative campaign ads against me, one of the few people who stood up to him, and that's who's paying for many of these ads you're seeing on TV. And literally, I've got 2 ads today just from Halberter's PAC, his super PAC in Washington, against me in the mail, which fraudulently state that I've raised taxes, which I have never done as a member of the state assembly. It's actually an anathema to my core values. I would never vote to raise taxes. And I don't know where this is coming from in Camden, but I do not support, Halberter. I think he's fraudulent. I think he's corrupt. And I've said it over and over. I've written, as I said, I've written articles in, nationally distributed newspapers such as the New York Post. And everybody pretty much knows where I stand on this issue. So that I don't know who wrote the letter, but this is a passion for me. I do this myself. I don't get paid for it. In fact, it costs me money to do this lawsuit. But I believe so much in our community and saving our community from this unconstitutional situation that I've taken upon myself to do this. And by running for Congress, of course, I've put myself out there as, to be have a campaign like this run against me. But I will do it again and again to stand up for the people in this community and also for all of us. This is our property values and our taxes that are being flushed down the toilet by our leaders, including Richard Hanna.
Let's take another question, but we have a survey question that dovetails into what you were just talking about quite well. Recently, you've received those numerous mailings from the Washington liberal interest groups. How do you feel about those groups interfering in this race? There are 5 possibilities. Please listen to them all first. Press 1 if you strongly disagree. In other words, you strongly disagree they should be interfering in this race. Press 2 if you just disagree. Press 3 if you find it valuable. Press 4 if you agree with them. Or press 5, you just tossed it in the garbage. Here goes with the question. Recently, you've received numerous mailings from Washington liberal interest groups. How do you feel about those groups interfering in this race? Press 1 if you strongly disagree. In other words, they shouldn't be in this. Or press 2 if you just disagree. Press 3 if you find it valuable. Press 4 if you agree with them. Press 5, you toss it in the garbage. We really appreciate your participation. We are now going to take Charles. Oh, and if you have a question, by the way, press 0. We're taking any more questions if you want to. Charles is next. Charles, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Charles, where you're from, and what's your question, please?
Lee, and my question is, what's her outlook on the immigration system and the amnesty?
Thank you, Charles, for the question. I don't support amnesty. I know many. I know obviously we're all at some point pretty much our ancestors are immigrants. My grandfather immigrated here from Europe, and though he came here legally, and I don't think that we should be condoning allowing citizens to come here and have their first act be to violate our laws. We have literally thousands of people waiting in Canada and around the world who would like to be American citizens, but they're doing it legally. They're waiting in line. They're taking the proper tests and whatever they need to do become citizens. And I think we need to support our laws. I don't think your first act should be to come in and have somebody forgive you for violating our law. I do have a big disagreement with Richard Hanna on this. He does support amnesty. He's backed by the U.S. Chamber, which is a huge amnesty supporter. He has a bill right now in the legislature, in the Congress, that would give aliens an expedited path to citizenship if they were science, technology, engineering, and math majors, and that would take away jobs from American citizens. We have an overwhelming number of students who are waiting to get jobs in those fields where there just simply aren't enough jobs. And now Richard Hanna's bill would actually allow 160,000 foreign nationals to come in and get expedited citizenship and take jobs away from Americans. I don't support that. Recently, Richard Hanna also voted to give welfare to illegal immigrants. I would not support that. I think we need to take care of our senior citizens and our truly needy in our society, and not allow our continued scamming of our system where people are not really truly needy, who are taking advantage using fraudulent methods. Our Medicaid, for example, in New York is larger than Texas and California combined. I've been fighting that in the state assembly and trying to reduce that. Again, we need to take care of our citizens that are here. We need to take care of people who are waiting in line lawfully to come into this country. And I think that I just don't support amnesty. I just don't think it's the way that we should go. I also think that we should secure our border. We're not doing that right now. And in fact, New York State has one of the most porous borders in the entire country. People think that it's Mexico or New Mexico, but it's actually New York State. And many of them are coming through the Akwesasne border up in the northern part of New York. But I thank you very much for the question, and don't support amnesty. Thanks.
Another survey question. Claudia Tenney can best represent me in Washington. You strongly agree with that? Press 1. Just agree with it? Press 2. Disagree? Press 3. Not sure? Press 4. Claudia can best represent me in Washington. Press 1. Strongly agree. Press 2. Agree. Press 3. Disagree. 4. Not sure. Appreciate your voting on this. We're going to take Shirley next. Shirley, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Shirley, where are you from, and what's your question, please?
I'm from Pulaski. And Claudia, I had never heard of you until I started getting these negative campaign mailings. So would appreciate just a few things of background of where you're from and what you have done. I gather you're an attorney and are currently serving in the state legislature, but you're not in my area. So, and my question is, how do you feel about pro-life and the gay marriage issue?
Thank you, Shirley. A little bit about me. I actually used to represent part of Oswego County. I was first elected to the state assembly in 2010. I was elected in my old district was the old 115th Assembly District. It was 18 towns in Oneida County and 9 in Oswego. I went along the north shore. The district went along the north shore of the lake and up to Oneida Lake and up to Redfield, so I didn't quite get to Pulaski, although I've been through there quite a number of times. I am an attorney, as I said. I grew up in New Hartford. I'm sitting at my house right now looking across the street where I grew up, my mother's house. I moved there in 1963. I went to high school here. I went to Colgate University for education, for my college degree, and I got a law degree at the University of Cincinnati. I came back to Utica, and I worked for our family business, but I'm also an attorney. I was a partner in a law firm in Utica, New York for 8 years. And then not really planning to go into politics until later in life. I'm 53 years old now, so I was first elected when I was 50. Although you might hear my opponent talk about me as a career politician, we both got elected the same year. I worked in our family business, which is a pharmaceutical packaging division, and I ran our newspaper. We owned a weekly newspaper that was started in 1946, and we sold the newspaper division in 2004. As I indicated earlier on the call, I don't know who's listening now, I am pro-life. I have a 100 pro-life rating from New York State Pro-Life. I'm supported by the Susan B. Anthony List, which is a national organization which supports women pro-life candidates. I voted against the gay marriage bill that was put up by Andrew Cuomo in 2011. I didn't think it put enough in. There was enough in it to provide for religious protections for groups that may or may not have agreed with that particular initiative. And let's see. I guess that my son I have a son who's 23 years old. He just graduated last year from the U.S. Naval Academy, and he's now an active duty Marine. He's stationed out of Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. One last thing about my family. My father was a state Supreme Court justice who served for 35 years and included all of Oswego County and Onondaga County in the 5th Judicial District. So thank you very much, Shirley, for your call. I hope that gave you enough information. And one last thing, I've never voted for a tax increase in spite of what all those flyers are saying and the commercials are saying. That's how I'm the top conservative in New York. I wouldn't have achieved that actually I'm in the top 2 or 3 for the last 4 years, but I wouldn't have received that distinction or that award from the Conservative Party or their endorsement every time that I've run for office, including now. If I were a tax and spend liberal as they're trying to portray me in the ads. But thank you so much for your call. Appreciate it.
And we're gonna do our last survey question of the night. Are you voting in the primary on June 24th? If you are, press 1. If you're not gonna, press 2. Are you going to be voting in the primary on June 24th? 1 is yes, 2 is no. We really appreciate you voting. Meanwhile, we're going to take Chris. Hello, Chris. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Chris, where are you from? And what's your question, please?
I'm from Binghamton, and I was just wondering what the difference between Hannah and you are on upstate New York and their financial difficulties and the lack of jobs.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I would say the greatest difference between Richard and I is that I run a small manufacturing facility that our family owns that has about 80 employees. My theory on trying to make us more competitive has been proven throughout the history of this country that every time we reduce taxes and reduce spending, we cause entrepreneurial activity and we cause jobs to be created. My opponent believes that if you take billions in taxpayer money and hand it over to big and wealthy corporations, that will cause some kind of trickle-down type of a prosperity. Unfortunately, I don't think that works. And I think New York State is a beautiful example of why that doesn't work, because that's exactly what Governor Cuomo does. In our last budget, there was almost $7 billion in New York State. Imagine that. $7 billion of taxpayer money just in this budget alone that has been funneled into private corporations and interests that the governor has to try to promote growth in business and tourism. What's been the result? New York has the largest outmigration of businesses and individuals than any other state in the country. That's 400,000 people since Governor Cuomo was elected. We are 50th in business friendliness. We have the highest tax burden of any other state in the country, surpassing California. We have the second highest energy costs of any other state, other than, I think it's New Jersey, I'm not sure, maybe California. We are the least free state, and we are the most business unfriendly, as I indicated, and that's because we engage in what I call crony capitalism, or corporatism as it's properly called. Crony capitalism means we take the taxpayers' money and give it and allow government to pick winners and losers. Richard believes in that. He's endorsed by the U.S. Chamber. They are the largest proponent of crony capitalism. They believe in TARP and bailouts and payoffs for big corporations. I believe they hurt small businesses. I believe that those types of payoffs just suffocate our ability to grow and to allow entrepreneurs and new people to get involved in business and to create jobs. And I think what many people don't realize is that 90% of the jobs are created by small business owners, and that is business owners with 50 employees or less, not the mega giants who politicians love to cozy up to because they have lots of money and they can make big donations. And I really am opposed to that as a small business owner. I've been the victim of subsidies as a business owner. I've had our competitors receive huge money from big government payoffs, big subsidies from powerful politicians in some cases, and it has hurt our business. It's made it more difficult for us to compete. And if you drive down any of the routes, you go into Binghamton and you go into some of those regions, down Route 8 and 12, like down into your area, you can see so many small businesses have gone out of business because they just can't compete against these big government interests, these big companies, big chain stores. And I just think that that's what we've done to crush our society instead of allowing the free market to take over and to allow people to invest in their own businesses and to thrive. I don't think people realize how serious an issue this is. But to me, that's one of the reasons that I think that's the greatest contrast between Richard Hanna and I. And he gladly and brags, and in every one of his flyers talks about his endorsement from the U.S. Chamber, and that's what they advocate. They advocate government picking winners and losers. They also just happen to be big proponents of Common Core and amnesty, and I don't support either one of those federal government plans. But thank you so much for the question, Chris.
Let's take another question. By the way, last time for this, if you want to provide us your email address for updates between now and Election Day, which is next week, of course, please press 7. That's 7 on the keypad on your phone. It's the last ask of that. Norm's next. Norm, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Norm, where are you from, and what's your question, please?
I'm from New York Mills, and I just had a side question that might answer some things for me. Had you been elected instead of Hanna in the prior election, would you have voted for Majority Speaker McCarthy?
You mean Boehner?
No, he meant McCarthy.
You mean now, him coming up? Everything I can tell about McCarthy right now looks like he's just a mirror image of the same principles that Eric Cantor stands for, which is, again, what I described in the prior question, crony capitalism, big government, crushing our constitutional rights. So I would not be supporting McCarthy because he seems to me like another Cantor, another Boehner. We need to take strong stands as members of the state legislature and also in Congress. I think we're at a crossroads. I think this country has allowed we've allowed ourselves to denigrate our own principles. And someone like Richard Hanna, I don't think people realize that he really is, I think he's very, he calls himself a moderate. I'd say he's more liberal at heart. He has described Republicans as angry and incapable of governing. He has advised women to give their money to Democrats. He has said after this year's, and I heard this with my own ears, he said this year after Obama's State of the Union address that he agreed with much of the Obama agenda. This guy in 2012, when he was running for his second term, and Obama was running against Romney, as late as September of 2012, could not decide if he was going to vote for Obama or Romney, and that is spelled out in an article in the Oneonta Star, and it was written by a guy named Joe Mahoney. I have a copy of it if anyone wants to see it. This is a person who routinely talks about Republicans not being capable of governing, not having good principles. And look, he says, I reach across the aisle. Look, I reach across the aisle, too, as a member of the State Assembly. We're 108 to 42. I have to work with Democrats, and we work well together when we can agree. But I would never denigrate the principles of the Republican Party, which I've stood for my entire life. I've been a registered Republican since I was 18. I've always supported our principles. I'm a conservative. I believe in less taxes, less government, and I believe that we're right about the economy and free markets and about allowing everyone an opportunity in our society. So I don't agree that the Republicans are angry and incapable of governing. I think that many people in the ruling class, the Republicans and Democrats, have gotten a little too comfortable in their positions. So I would say, back to your question, I would not support the same old status quo that we've been supporting as Republicans. I think it's time for a change. I don't think I'm some nut or some crazy. I think I'm a principled, common sense conservative, and I think that I can stand for these principles. I understand the role of government. I think as an attorney and someone who's practiced in federal and state court, I know the difference in the role of government and where we should properly be. I really believe that Richard Hanna I don't think he's not well-intentioned. I don't really think he understands the proper role of the federal government and the state government. And when we take an oath of office to uphold the Constitution, you have to have a profound understanding of what we're doing, and that the founders came up with a great guide for us to follow to prevent tyranny and to promote the values that we have as Americans, which is our freedom and individual rights. And that's what's sacred about our Constitution and our way of life that no other country in the world reveres as we do. So I would say that I would definitely not be voting for McCarthy. Thank you.
Let's take another question right away if we can. We're going to take it from Frank. Frank, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting with Claudia. Frank, where are you from, and what is your question, please?
Hi, Claudia. This is Frank Bennett. I'm from Binghamton, New York. I had a funny question asked me the other day. One of my neighbors is a postman carrier, and we were talking about the postage rates and stuff, and I go, why don't they just, instead of raising it a penny at a time, raise it to $1 for stamps, But she goes, no, she says, you don't understand. She goes, I think she said $60 million of the postal money goes back to Congress, and I never knew Congress ran the post office.
Well, actually, the Postal Rate Commission is an arm of the Congress, and I have it's funny that you pick a topic like that because we used to own a newspaper. It was a direct mailed piece, and we used to spend probably over $1 million a year just on postage and dealing with postal rates. So we were very sensitive to postal rates and who sets the rates. The Postal Rate Commission is controlled by Congress, believe it or not, and they have. I've testified before Congress and the congressional subcommittees on postal rates. The problem that you have with the post office is that we provide what they call universal mail. Only one other postal system in the world does that, and that's New Zealand. We consider our postal delivery as something that's sacred. Many times they catch people committing fraud because they've put something in a post office or they've mailed something. No one is allowed to use our post offices. So if someone goes your door to door and they put something in in your mailbox, that's actually considered federal space. So the reason that it's so costly is because we do provide universal mail. Many people don't understand that. That's something that's very unique to the United States. I actually think it's important in a lot of ways. I know that there's ways that we could actually reduce the cost of postal, but I think if we were to completely dismantle our postal system now, I think a lot of people would be surprised at how hard it would be for our economy to thrive. And let me just say one quick thing. There are different types of mail rates. There's first class, and then there's all the different rates that go down all the way down to like a standard rate, which would be what you usually get flyers, like the ones you're probably getting in the mail. Those are actually political. That's a separate standard or a separate category. But the lowest rates would be the things you get from, what the newspapers dubbed as junk mail, which we call advertising mail. So those have some of the lower rates, but for the first time in the history of post office, about 9 years ago, maybe it was 10 years ago now, I'm getting older, the actual number and the value of that advertising mail surpassed first-class rates. So now the post office has had to reshift its emphasis on talking about and going toward more of an ad mail rate, and that's where the bulk of your postage is going to be. So bringing the rates to $1 would probably not be very efficient in terms of our businesses, and many of our laws require that we do postal and mailings and certain things. And until you change those, there's a lot of people that you don't realize are really affected by the mail delivery. So although right now we're running at huge deficits with the post office, there are ways of reducing the post office without eliminating universal mail. But thank you, Frank, for the question. It's an interesting one because it is one that is very much a problem with our budget.
Let's take another question. Let's take it from Mike, if we can. Mike, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Mike, where are you from, and what is your question, please?
Yes, I'm from Herkimer. Claudia, what would you favor reducing the corporate tax rate to 0 to create for job stimulation? And also, what are your feelings on this trademark deal, taking it away from the Washington Redskins? I mean, who's next? The Kansas City Chiefs, the Indians? I mean, I can't even believe that they can get away with something like this. But what's your feelings on both of those issues?
Okay. Yeah, thanks. The first is reducing the corporate tax rates. Well, you probably saw me on Cavuto a few nights ago where we were comparing corporate tax rates around the world. And Ireland, for example, has a corporate tax rate of about 12%. And the United States has an average corporate tax rate of about 35%. One of the reasons that we have really, it's actually American companies are maintaining billions in cash reserves overseas because they don't want to lose all this money if they come back to the United States and are taxed at a 35% rate. I would love to see it go to zero, only because as long as shareholders are paying their taxes, because remember, every corporation that has shareholders, you're double taxed. You're taxed at the corporate level, and you're also taxed when you distribute dividends, because your shareholders then have to pay taxes on dividends, and then any of your employees also have to pay income tax. So there's many ways that corporations are taxed already, in that way. We also have many corporations that are what they call S corporations. That means that all of the corporation is put through an individual, like a lot of our small businesses are operated that way. And so that's in order to help, use deductions and other ways to reduce our rates. I would like to see us go to a sensible, fair rate that's very low to encourage our American companies to come back to the United States and invest with us. We have so many opportunities and great employees to be able to work here, but they're offshoring employees and they're offshoring their cash reserves, which is taking the wealth away from the United States. And so I'm for reducing the rate. It could be zero. It could be anywhere between 0 to 12, but we certainly want to be more competitive. We don't want to lose our businesses, especially American businesses, and their wealth to other countries, and that's what's happened over the last 30 years. As we continue to raise our rates, we've lost so much wealth in this country. Secondly, on the trademark deal with the Washington Redskins, that's actually happened a few different times with the Redskins. That is just politics. You can see the influence that Ray Halberter has on the Obama administration, and their continuing desire to try to go after the Washington Redskins for the name. As you may or may not know, I represent a full-blooded Oneida Indian. Halberter is not even an Oneida, which I have to continue to emphasize. He has co-opted the Oneida culture to make, literally millions off of them. And he has only been in this battle for about a year and a half because he's trying to make a name for himself in some narcissistic, corrupt dictator fashion. But I think the trademark issue is definitely something that's probably will certainly get overturned in the courts. Unfortunately, the Redskins are going to have to go through that procedure and win again. It's happened to them 2 or 3 times, I believe. But it's absurd. I mean, what are we doing getting involved in this issue? This is not something that our federal government should be getting involved with. We're simply regulating commerce. That's one of the jobs of Congress. So, again, you can see politics and money rearing its ugly head again in our federal political system, and it's unfortunate. I do think that, I don't really have an opinion about the Redskins name. I am an RG3 fan, though. I do think he's a super talent. But I think that as long as they're not denigrating or doing something negative, to denigrate the Native American cultures, and I think many of them, I think it's up to 80% actually support the Redskins name. And one last thing before I carry on too long, I was involved in a podcast last night with a Native American group, and everyone on the call actually supports the Redskins name. So it's not something, Ray Halberter is sort of pulling this out of really just self-interest and trying to make a name for himself. But thank you for the call, and I'm happy to talk about tax rates anytime. Mm-hmm. Any other calls?
Let's take Carol next. Carol, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting with Claudia. Please go ahead with your question, but first of all, where are you from?
I'm from Castle Creek, New York, and I'm a single mom. Before I ask my question, I want to say to Claudia, congratulations and thank you on your son's graduating from the academy. Raising a responsible, patriotic child is not an accident.
Oh no, he's great. It's an honor, really. What's your question?
Well, my question is, would you give me a little bit of your summary of your position on raising the debt ceiling?
We got elected to office. It's interesting. I am totally opposed to raising the debt ceiling. It's there for a reason. We have a debt ceiling so we don't surpass it. And one thing we should never do, certainly, is allow it to be increased without having some kind of corresponding reduction or concessions. And I would not, as Richard Hanna has done twice, I would not vote to raise the debt ceiling. I have stood strong against the debt ceiling in New York. A lot of people don't realize we actually have a debt ceiling in New York, and it's part of our New York State budget. We pass that each year. It's one of the first bills that comes before the House. and I have voted 4 years in a row in the state assembly to vote against raising New York's debt ceiling. This year, we increased the debt ceiling and increased our interest payments alone. The new interest payments added to our unfunded liabilities, which are literally hundreds of billions of dollars, was $7 billion this year alone in taxpayer money just for increased interest on our debt ceiling. So I can't support it. The United States is a power because of our economic strength. If we continue to allow ourselves to be indebted to countries like China and India and to be vulnerable in the Middle East, that's what our true strength is our economy. And if we're going to, bankrupt our economy on debt, we need to learn how to control spending. We need to take many of these costly federal programs and just eliminate them. We cannot continue to provide programs that aren't even constitutionally allowed by our federal constitution. The federal government has a very limited role when it was created back in 1789. It was for national defense, border security, and regulating commerce. All these other things that we've gotten involved with are really should not be part of the federal government. And as we added more things along, we even created the income tax, which is something we shouldn't have either. But anyway, I would definitely vote against it, and I hope and wish, and I had always wished, and Richard Hanna promised he wouldn't vote for it, but he did it twice, unfortunately. Thank you.
Let's take another question if we can. Let's take it from William. William, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. William, where are you from, and what's your question, please?
Hi, I'm from Kirkwood, New York, and my question to Claudia was, in light of recent legislation across the country, state to state, limiting gun ownership, limiting magazine sizes, the shortage of ammunition that has been out there, the voting in of the New York SAFE Act, where do you stand on our Second Amendment rights as United States citizens?
Oh, thank you very much for the question, William. I was just in Kirkwood the other day at the Elks Lodge. I'm also a fellow elk from the Ilion Lodge. I am a 100% supporter of our Constitution, which includes the Second Amendment, which is a right, not a privilege. People don't realize that they talk about. The crazy governor talks about hunting and all that, but the Second Amendment was created to protect us from tyranny from our own government, because our founders knew that throughout the history of mankind, one of the most egregious, unfortunately, repeating acts that has occurred, and you can look at Oliver Cromwell in Ireland and numerous, you can just look at the Middle East. So many of tyrannical governments have arisen, and they've gotten control of the military or control of any type of military apparatus and turned on their own citizens. And that was one of the reasons the founders put the Second Amendment in the place that it is. It's not 10, it's not 11, it's not 12, it's not down toward the end, it's second, because it's only second to our right to freedom of religion and free speech. I've worked diligently against passage of the SAFE Act. I worked as I represent Remington Arms in my current assembly district, which is also part of the 22nd Congressional District. And in doing that, I was able to, at least we were able to delay the passage of the SAFE Act. Sadly, our state Senate allowed it to go through. And unfortunately, the governor passed it into law, and I've been fighting to repeal it. I'm the first legislator to propose total repeal legislation of the SAFE Act. And I will continue to fight for that as a member of the Congress. I have a 100 rating from NRA. I have an A+ rating from New York State Rifle and Pistol. I have a 100 rating from from Gun Owners of America. I have a 100 rating from New York Revolution and New York Scope. I'm a huge supporter of gun owner rights, and I just do not accept the gun grabbers who think that limiting the rights of our lawful gun owners is somehow going to make us more safe. And I think that more education on that, and I would love to see more women out there. I love every day I go out and I see the women in their pink hats supporting gun owner rights, and I think that we need to continue to educate the public on this issue. It was once a great tradition of this country for everyone to know how to safely bear arms and to protect us, or for their own self-protection. So I'd just like to see us return to that. I think it's a tradition of this country, and to do it safely would be, to educate people to understand how to have safe gun owner usage would be wonderful. But thank you so much for the question.
Let's take Anthony next. Anthony, welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Anthony, where are you from, and what's your question, please?
New Hartford. Well, twofold. First, does Claudia know that she can debate Mr. Hanna, even though he doesn't want to? He doesn't want to debate her. He could probably do it much like Clint Eastwood did during the Republican convention. You put an empty chair on the stage, ask the moderator, ask Mr. Hanna, who is the empty chair question, and ask you. And if he can't answer, you can answer his question for him and make the truth come out. And then secondly, I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's a push on by most states. We have a small business, have a subcontractors work for us, and the state wants us to put all these subcontractors on their payroll, which is going to be extremely detrimental to small businesses in the state, regardless of what the governor says helps business out. Yeah, if you're a big business, fine, but me, the small businessman, it's not good for us.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and we are going to try to do an empty chair debate as soon as we can get something set up. We keep hoping, hope springs eternal, that Richard will eventually accept that. Unfortunately, he has not yet, and if it gets to Sunday or Monday, we will do an empty chair debate. Secondly, I support you 100% on this ridiculous notion that we're going to force subcontractors to be on the payroll. The independent contractor law should not be changed and turned into, a lot of people want to be independent contractors. They're not part of management. They're not part of a small business, and it's a huge burden on small business owners to have to incorporate every independent contractor or anyone into their fold as part of their corporation, especially if you're a sole proprietorship or you're a small partnership or even a subchapter S corporation. So I don't support that, and I will not support that as a member of the State Assembly. So thank you, and I hope that your business continues to thrive. I know it's a struggle here in New York, but hang in there. Maybe we can change some of these laws and bring New York back to some freedom and some free markets. Thank you for the call, Anthony, and you're a fellow New Hartford person. Nice to hear from you.
We can't take any more questions because we're running out of time. We've got about 3 minutes left for you to wrap up, if you could, please, Claudia. But I want to remind people, if you couldn't get your question in, leave us a voicemail at the end. We'll try to get back to you with an answer. We need your name, your phone number, and your email address. We are in campaign mode right now. We'll give it the best shot we can. Claudia, bring us to the finish line, if you would, please.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for your phone calls or for your questions. I really appreciate the opportunity that you're giving me to talk to you directly and find out what your concerns are. Again, the primary is Tuesday. I'm running for Congress because I'm a true constitutional conservative. Don't let the relentless ads and the flyers in the mail influence you. I am the top conservative in New York, and the Conservative Party of New York is endorsing me and has always endorsed me in every campaign that I've run. From 2010 to 2012, and even in this campaign for Congress. My ratings with just about every major conservative organization are either 96 to 100, mostly 100. On contrast that with Richard Hanna, every major rating organization in the country that rates conservatives, National Journal, FreedomWorks, Americans for Prosperity, Heritage Action, American Conservative Union, and the National Right to Life Committee, Richard Hanna holds either a 50% or less rating, and in most cases he's hovering in the mid-40s. That's a grade of F. And for him to complain or talk about being a conservative, and for these mega super PACs, these liberal super PACs, to be promoting him as a conservative is just being duplicitous to you, the voter, and to all of us. So please don't listen to those ads and try to get the information. Go to my website or try to or contact our office at 315-725-2279 or ClaudiaTenney.com. That's TENNEY.com. I would greatly appreciate your support and your vote. And I would be happy to answer any questions. We'll be meeting in person tomorrow. We'll be all over the district, so please call and arrange for a personal meeting. Again, thank you so much for everyone for putting in your good questions, and we hope that we can be successful and allow and actually vote in a true constitutional conservative and someone that stands for freedom and individual rights. and we'll uphold our Constitution on Tuesday, June 24th. Thanks again so much.